So if you ask an AI to generate a single image, it actually consumes as much electricity as charging your smartphone to 100%.
Right, which is wild.
It is. And now, multiply that by billions of queries happening every single day across the globe.
Yeah, the scale is just, it's hard to wrap your head around.
Exactly. So today, we are looking at the massive physical infrastructure required to just keep the lights on while artificial intelligence tries to basically drink the power grid dry. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
So our mission today for you listening is to unpack a really fascinating stack of financial sources. We've got the Q1 2026 earnings call transcript, some financial press releases, and major analyst reports from Morningstar, CFRI, and Bank of America.
Yeah, a lot of heavy reading.
For sure. But they all focus on one specific company sitting right at the center of this whole thing, which is GE Vernova.
Right, which is really the ultimate bottleneck company right now.
Definitely. And just for some context for everyone, GE Vernova spun off from the legacy General Electric, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And today, it's a $300 billion standalone energy titan. I mean, their technology supports about 25% of the entire world's electricity generation.
Yeah, so essentially, 1 in every 4 light bulbs you see is powered by their equipment.
Which is just a mind-blowing statistic. And the numbers in these reports, they are staggering. But what we want to do today is, cut through the heavy financial jargon.
Right. Look past just the headline numbers.
Yeah, exactly. To understand the mechanics of what analysts are calling a multi-generational electrical supercycle. We're going to explore why demand is surging, the actual physical constraints of building this stuff, the challenges they're facing, and what it all means for the future of global power.
And, to really understand the velocity of the supercycle, we have to ground ourselves in the sheer scale of the first quarter numbers they just put out.
Because Wall Street was largely caught off guard already.
Oh, completely. Nobody modeled for how fast this is accelerating.
Yeah, because the Q1 highlights, they look like a misprint. Total orders hit $18.3 billion.
Which is a 71% organic increase.
Just massive. And revenue hit $9.3 billion. But the metric that really stops you in your tracks is the free cash flow.
Oh, yeah, the FCF.
Right. It hit $4.8 billion. Now, for anyone who doesn't spend all day reading earnings reports, how do we translate free cash flow?
Sure. So free cash flow is essentially the cash a company is left over after paying its operating expenses and all its capital expenditures.
So, like clear, unencumbered cash in the bank after the heavy machinery, factory upkeep, all the bills are paid.
Exactly. And the mind-blowing part here is that they generated more free cash flow in the first 90 days of 2026 than they did in the entirety of 2025 combined.
Wait, really? Just in one quarter?
Yeah. Which is, it's an incredibly rare phenomenon in heavy industrial manufacturing.
Right, because, software companies can scale cash flow fast because they have, near zero marginal costs.
Exactly. But a company that's bending steel and building massive turbines usually has these intense, drawn-out capital expenditure cycles.
So pumping out $4.8 billion in 90 days is just...
It shows a level of operational leverage that Wall Street simply hadn't anticipated.
Wow. And it's piling up fast, too. I saw the total backlog grew to $163 billion.
Yep, up $13 million in just those 90 days.
That's crazy. And management is targeting $200 billion by 2027. But, I'll have to push back on that a little bit.
I think go for it.
$163 billion backlog, which is future revenue already contracted. That sounds fantastic for shareholders.
Sure.
But if I'm a utility company or like a tech giant, that backlog just looks like a giant, slow-moving line. Doesn't a wait time that massive eventually alienate customers? Don't they just go look for alternatives?
Well, in a normal market, absolutely. But right now, there are no immediate alternatives that can deliver at this kind of scale.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so that friction you're talking about is actually creating a totally different dynamic. Customers are so desperate to secure their place in that massive line that we're seeing an explosion in SRAs.
SRAs, slot reservation agreements.
Exactly, and their gas turbine SRAs alone increased to 56 gigawatts this quarter.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm getting this. This is basically like putting down a massive non-refundable deposit on a hypercar that hasn't even been built yet, right?
Yeah.
Just to hold your place in line for delivery in 2029?
That is the perfect analogy. But, the stakes are infinitely higher.
Because it's not a weekend joyride.
Right. These customers are major utility networks and tech giants looking at their future power load projections and realizing they are going to face severe, severe deficits.
You're going to run out of juice.
Exactly. So they're essentially telling GE Vernova, look, we know you can't actually forge and build our gas turbine until 2029, but here is a massive pile of upfront capital just to guarantee that when you do have the factory floor space, you build ours first.
Wow. And that level of capital commitment leads right into the mechanics of the demand itself. Like, why are these tech giants suddenly panicking about running out of power?
It all comes down to the physical architecture of the AI revolution. So the reports highlight that GE Vernova's electrification orders soared 86%. But the specific, staggering stat here is that orders explicitly for data centers in Q1 alone reached $2.4 billion.
Wait, $2.4 billion just for data centers in one quarter?
Yep. That surpassed their total data center orders for all of 2025.
That is insane. And the main drivers here, the sources talk a lot about hyperscalers.
Right.
To simplify that, we're basically talking about the massive tech companies running the global cloud infrastructure and training these generative AI models.
Exactly, the tech giants. And a hyperscaler data center operates under entirely different physical constraints than, say, a traditional factory or residential grid.
How so?
Well, a traditional manufacturing plant might power down a shift at night, right?
Yeah.
And a residential neighborhood has massive power peaks in the evening when everyone gets home and then valleys at 3 a.m.
Sure, that makes sense.
But an AI data center requires an immense, highly reliable, uninterrupted flow of electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
It never sleeps.
Exactly. If the voltage drops or fluctuates even slightly, servers crash and multi-million-dollar AI training runs are completely ruined.
Huh. Which is why you can't just run an AI data center on wind power.
Yeah.
It's like a marathon runner trying to survive on sugar rushes when the sun comes out.
That's a great way to put it.
They need that constant heavy stream of complex carbs, that baseload gas power to keep moving 24/7. Because as much as we all want a green, decarbonized grid, the reality is renewables are intermittent.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You cannot run a hyperscale facility hoping the wind stays consistent.
Right.
And because of that physical intermittency, natural gas power is currently the primary beneficiary of the AI boom. It provides that dispatchable, firm baseload power.
So they are locking in gas turbines.
Yep. As a result, roughly 20% of GE Vernova's total gigawatts under contract right now are explicitly dedicated to supporting data centers.
Which brings up a really fascinating dynamic in the Morningstar report regarding pricing power.
Oh, yeah. The structural shift.
Right. Because normally companies in the heavy power generation space, they sell the initial gas turbine at a razor-thin margin, right?
Sometimes even taking a loss.
Right, just to get the equipment installed so they can lock the customer into decades of lucrative maintenance and parts contracts.
Yeah.
Like the classic razor and blade business model.
Exactly.
So has that dynamic shifted with all this new AI demand?
It has fundamentally inverted.
Really?
Yeah, Morningstar's analysis emphasizes that GE Vernova is experiencing a massive structural pricing shift.
Because everyone is so desperate for the hardware.
Exactly. Because the demand is overwhelming and capacity is so constrained, they no longer have to discount the razor.
Why?
They are now commanding massive margins on the original power generation equipment itself, while still securing those long-term, high-margin service contracts for the blades.
So they're winning on both ends.
Right. It completely changes their profitability profile.
Okay, well, locking in an $18 billion quarter with massive margins is a fantastic problem to have. But a contract on a piece of paper doesn't actually keep the servers running. How does a company physically scale a heavy industrial factory floor to meet a 71% surge in demand?
It's tough.
Because you can't just snap your fingers and conjure up specialized manufacturing capacity, you know?
You can't, which is why management is taking some really aggressive action, both externally and internally.
Okay, let's look at external first.
So externally, the sources detail their $5.3 billion acquisition of the remaining 50% stake in a joint venture called Prolec GE.
Right, because they already own half of it.
Yep. But bringing it entirely in-house was a critical strategic maneuver.
Because Prolec GE manufactures electrical transformers.
Exactly.
And if you follow the grid expansion space at all, you know, transformers are arguably the single biggest bottleneck in the world right now.
Unquestionably.
So why is that specific component so hard to scale? Why is everyone waiting on transformers?
Well, it's a combination of raw material and specialized labor. Transformers require a highly specific material called grain-oriented electrical steel.
Okay.
And that steel is globally supply constrained right now. Furthermore, Winding a massive high-voltage transformer isn't something you can easily automate with, like a standard robotic arm.
It's not just an assembly line widget.
Right, it requires highly skilled manual precision.
Ah, I see.
So by taking full ownership of Prolec, GE Vernova directly added $5 billion to their electrification backlog and secured dedicated transformer capacity.
Which is vital for modernizing the North American grid to handle these new AI power loads.
Precisely.
Okay, so buying their way out of a bottleneck makes total sense. But what about the internal side? Because reading the earnings transcript, CEO Scott Strezek talks constantly about lean manufacturing.
Oh, he is obsessed with it.
Yeah. It almost sounds like a buzzword, though. How does lean actually solve a physical capacity problem?
Well, lean manufacturing focuses on relentlessly eliminating friction on the factory floor to reduce cycle times.
Okay, what does that actually look like in practice?
To give you a very tangible example from their presentation, they ran hundreds of these intense improvement workshops and managed to eliminate over 100,000 lifting activities across their facilities.
Wait, 100,000 lifting activities?
Yeah.
So you mean like instead of a 50-ton turbine casing needing to be hooked up to a massive ceiling crane and moved across the factory 3 different times during assembly?
Exactly. They reorganized the floor plan so it just stays in one place.
It sounds so basic.
It does, but when you shave 10 hours off the assembly of a single turbine, that time compounds massively across a $163 billion backlog.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. It increases throughput without them having to build an entirely new factory.
Right. And alongside that physical lean manufacturing, they are aggressively deploying AI software internally.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
Yeah, they use it to manage their massive installed base of equipment. Because they have the largest installed base in the world, they're using decades of historical data to automatically match projected customer part failures with factory availability.
That's incredibly smart.
Yeah, that alone is saving tens of millions of dollars and thousands of manual hours in supply chain management.
Wait, okay, let's just trace the logic here for a second.
Okay.
So they are utilizing artificial intelligence internally to figure out how to more efficiently build the power plants
Right.
that will be used to generate the electricity
Yeah.
to power the artificial intelligence data centers.
Yes. It is the ultimate technological feedback loop.
That is just wild to think about.
It really is. AI is not just their biggest external demand driver creating the supercycle, it's simultaneously their most powerful internal efficiency tool.
It's optimizing the creation of its own physical power source.
Exactly.
Man. Okay, now, up to this point, the narrative in these reports feels like a flawless victory.
Yeah.
Right? Booming orders, massive cash flow, AI feedback loops.
Sure.
But it can't all be perfect. If we look under the hood, there's a segment that is actively bleeding cash.
Yeah, we absolutely have to address the headwinds.
Let's talk about the wind segment.
Right. Because while gas power and electrification are surging, the wind division is struggling significantly.
How bad is it?
Well, first quarter revenue for wind dropped 25% organically.
Ouch.
Yeah. And their operating earnings, their EBITDA, saw increased losses. Management is actually projecting further losses of $200 million to $300 million in the second quarter alone.
Wow. So what are the specific mechanics driving those losses? Is it just a lack of demand for wind?
No, it's a brutal combination of physical and economic factors. They are seeing lower volumes in onshore equipment, sure, but a massive drain is coming from their legacy offshore wind contracts.
Offshore is notoriously unforgiving.
Incredibly unforgiving. You're dealing with turbine blades, the length of football fields, tiny maritime weather windows, and a severe global shortage of the specialized installation vessels required to even anchor these massive structures into the ocean floor.
I didn't even think about the boats.
Oh, yeah. And then saltwater degradation alone drives up maintenance costs exponentially. Plus, on top of all the physical challenges, supply chain tariffs have dramatically driven up the cost of raw materials.
Right. And actually, the CFRA report flags a major external variable here regarding government policy.
Yes, they do.
They note potential regulatory headwinds for the wind segment under a Trump administration, specifically regarding potential rollbacks or changes to the Inflation Reduction Act and U.S. tax credits.
That is a critical variable. And, it's entirely objective from a financial modeling standpoint.
Right. The analysts are just running the numbers.
Exactly. The financial analysts at CFRA monitor these potential policy shifts because wind installations in the U.S. have historically been incredibly sensitive to changes in tax credits.
It creates these sort of boom and bust capital cycles.
Right. Any shift in government policy directly impacts long-term forecasting for renewable energy investments, regardless of the political administration in charge. Capital deployment just requires predictability.
Absolutely. And just a quick reminder for you listening, all the information and analysis we are discussing here today is simply to help you better understand the market and is absolutely not investment advice. Investing involves risk, so please make sure to do your own thorough research or consult a professional financial advisor before entering the market.
Always good to remember.
Yes. So, with that essential context in mind, if the offshore wind segment is facing these brutal physical realities and potential policy shifts, what is management's strategy to fix the bleeding?
Well, the corporate strategy is somewhat counterintuitive for a company in a booming supercycle.
Okay.
They are executing a strategy to shrink to profitability.
Shrink. I mean, shrinking seems like the last thing you want to do right now.
It does, but it is exactly what they need to do in this specific division. GE Vernova is actively retrenching.
How so?
Instead of trying to maintain global market share and bidding on these incredibly risky offshore projects in Europe or Asia, they're pulling back.
Just stepping away from the bad deals.
Right. They are focusing their resources primarily on the U.S. onshore wind market, where they already possess a deeply entrenched logistical network and a strong competitive advantage.
Okay.
Yeah, they are willingly sacrificing global market share to ensure that the projects they do accept actually generate a sustainable profit margin. It's a calculated retreat to secure the foundations.
Which forces us to weigh the two sides of the business,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
You have this calculated retreat and hundreds of millions in projected losses in the wind segment, counterbalanced by the explosive gains and massive margins in gas turbines and grid electrification.
Yeah.
So where does that leave the company's actual trajectory? How is Wall Street digesting this mixed picture?
Wall Street's verdict is overwhelmingly bullish.
Really? Even with the wind losses?
Yeah, because the strength of the gas and grid segments so vastly overshadows the drag from wind.
The sheer scale of the AI demand just buries it.
Exactly. Management was confident enough to significantly raise their 2026 full-year guidance across the board.
Okay, let's hear the new numbers.
They're now projecting $44.5 billion to $45.5 billion in revenue, and they bumped that free cash flow target up to between $6.5 billion and $7.5 billion for the year.
That is massive cash generation. And there is one more vital metric in that upgraded guidance, right?
Yes.
They raised their adjusted EBITDA margin expectations to between 12 and 14% for the year.
Right.
Now, I know 14% might not sound mind-blowing if you're used to looking at software or tech companies.
Sure, software margins are way higher.
But in the context of heavy industry, that is a massive signal, isn't it?
It is a phenomenal signal. So adjusted EBITDA margin measures operating profitability, right? It's basically how efficiently a company turns revenue into actual profit before accountants deduct interest, taxes, and depreciation.
Just the core business efficiency.
Exactly. And in heavy manufacturing, where you're dealing with massive supply chain costs, union labor, and raw steel, expanding your margin to 14% proves that the lean manufacturing initiatives and those structural pricing shifts we discussed are genuinely working.
They are actually pulling it off.
They are. And the analyst targets reflect that realization perfectly.
Oh, yeah, let's look at those.
Bank of America set a price target of $13,310.
CFRA came in at $1,350.
But the Morningstar report was arguably the most revealing, I think.
Oh, 100%.
They effectively admitted that their previous models were just too cautious, right?
Yeah, they had viewed this as a standard cyclical industrial boom that would eventually cool off and revert to historical averages.
But no, it's just a regular cycle. It'll pass.
Exactly. But based on the sheer scale of the Q1 backlog and that structural shift in pricing power, Morningstar completely revised their models.
What did they change it to?
They upgraded their fair value estimate for the company by a massive 65%, jumping from $600 all the way to $1,000.
Wow. It is rare for a major research firm to formally state that a fundamental paradigm shift is underway like that.
It really is.
Yeah.
But they explicitly noted that GE Vernova is positioned to disproportionately benefit from this ongoing supercycle. Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. Let's do a rapid-fire recap of this deep dive for you listening, just to ensure all the pieces of this complex puzzle fit together.
Sounds good. So we started by looking at the blowout first quarter financials, highlighted by a 71% surge in orders and a staggering $4.8 billion in free cash flow.
Right, which was driven by the insatiable 247 baseload power demands of hyperscalers building out the infrastructure for the AI revolution.
Then we explored how GE Vernova is physically managing that surging demand. Strategically buying out Prolec GE to secure constrained transformer capacity.
Utilizing lean manufacturing to shave hours off assembly times.
And deploying AI internally to manage their massive supply chain.
We balance that by acknowledging the deep challenges in the wind segment, analyzing the physical and regulatory friction points.
And detailing management strategy to shrink to profitability by focusing strictly on the U.S. onshore market.
And finally, we saw how the overwhelming momentum of the gas and grid businesses empowered management to raise their 2026 guidance, forcing Wall Street to just completely reevaluate the company's valuation in light of this multi-generational supercycle.
It really provides an incredibly comprehensive picture of a massive industrial titan acting as the physical anchor for the digital intelligence boom.
It really does. But, as we bring this conversation to a close, I want to zoom out for a second.
Okay.
We've spent a lot of time analyzing 2026, the 2027 backlog targets, and those SRA slot reservations reaching out to 2029.
Right.
But if we look past the current horizon, where does the physics of this energy transition ultimately lead us?
Well, buried in the footnotes of the Morningstar and CFRA reports is a really fascinating detail about the next decade.
What did they find?
They mentioned that GE Vernova is heavily investing in the development of SMR's small modular reactors.
Oh, those are the advanced factory-built mini-nuclear power plants, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because right now, natural gas is acting as the highly profitable, reliable bridge fuel powering today's massive AI data centers.
Simply because intermittent renewables just cannot provide that required 2047 baseload power.
Right. But if the global economy is truly committed to a decarbonized future, it leaves us with a really provocative thought to mull over.
Which is?
Could these modular nuclear reactors, quietly being engineered and perfected today, become the ultimate zero-carbon endgame for powering the intelligence age in the 2030s?
Wow. Moving from a massive natural gas bridge today to a modular nuclear endgame tomorrow.
Exactly.
That is a heavy, fascinating thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration helped clear the muddy waters of the global energy supercycle for you. Keep questioning the physical realities behind the digital world. Keep looking for those hidden connections, and we will catch you on the next one.